Out here in the middle of nowhere, the last thing Frederick expected to see was someone's pet. But walking along the roadside was a big dog, and it clearly wasn't a stray. As Frederick got closer and decided to follow it for a bit, he began to realize the dog wasn't just wandering around for no reason. And pretty soon he knew he had no choice but to call 911. Frederick felt a little puzzled when he spotted a large Labrador trotting beside the road. What was a dog like that doing way out here all alone? They were far into the countryside, and Frederick himself was only driving through on a long 6-hour trip to visit his mother in the next town. He scanned the area but didn't see any houses, barns, or farms nearby. There was also no person in sight who might have been walking the dog. It quickly became clear that this poor animal was out here by itself. And being the dog lover he was, Frederick couldn't just drive past and leave it behind. He pulled over next to the dog and rolled his window down. To his surprise, the dog instantly put its front paws up on the door, startling him a bit. It clearly knew cars and people. Frederick figured that had to be the case. This dog didn't just wander out here by accident. And now that he could see it up close, the dog looked healthy and well cared for. It also wore a large collar, which confirmed that it must belong to someone. With the collar right there, Frederick tried to spot a tag, but there wasn't any name or contact info on it. Still, with a collar like that, there was a good chance it had a chip or tracker. Now he had to decide what to do. What was he supposed to do with this dog? It clearly wanted something from him. At first, he thought it wanted to hop in the car, so he opened the back door. But instead of getting in, the dog backed away a few steps and started barking. Not aggressively, more like it was trying to get his attention. Frederick didn't know what to do next. He wanted to help. It was starting to feel more and more like this dog really was out here alone. The only solution that made sense was to get it in his truck and drive to the nearest animal shelter. They could try to track down the owner or put out a notice that the dog had been found. But no matter what he did, the dog wouldn't get in. It barely even let Frederick get close. It seemed nervous, like it thought he might grab it and force it into the car. It would have been easy to just shrug, get back in the truck, and move on with his trip. But something inside Frederick held him back. Something told him this wasn't over yet. By now, Frederick had a pretty good idea of what this strange dog wanted. It clearly wanted him to follow. Every time Frederick moved toward it, the dog would take a step too, always in the same direction. It was leading him somewhere, and Frederick was getting more and more curious about where. He glanced ahead in the direction the dog was pointing. Right away, he could tell that driving there wasn't going to work. The area was too rough, only manageable on foot. So he sighed, locked his car, and started walking after the dog. And the moment he did, the dog perked up. Its tail started wagging, and it kept looking back at Frederick with what looked like a happy grin. It was clearly glad he was coming. Frederick, on the other hand, just had a head full of questions. He'd already sent his mom a quick text saying he'd be late, but he had no clue how long this little adventure was going to last. They crossed the open field, Frederick trailing behind the eager lab. The path looked easy at first, but it got tricky fast as they neared the edge of a thick forest. Tall trees loomed ahead, casting long shadows over the ground. The dog marched right on in, tail high, pushing through the brush without hesitation. As the trees closed in above them, Frederick slowed down. The bright daylight barely made it through the canopy, turning the space beneath into a quiet, dim tunnel. Every now and then, he heard a rustle or some distant sound in the woods, little reminders that this was wild land they were walking into. The trail twisted deeper into the forest, shaped by the dog's steady lead. Something shifted in the quiet. The dog, who had kept a bit of distance until now, suddenly let Frederick come closer. It even paused more often and looked back, as if checking to make sure he was still there. There was a quiet understanding building between them, something simple but strong. As that trust grew, Frederick figured he had a shot. He reached out and gently grabbed the dog's collar. The dog froze, surprised, but didn't try to pull away. Frederick ran his fingers along the inside of the collar and finally found a name: Max. No phone number or address, just the name. But there was also something else, something hard and unfamiliar tucked inside. Feeling that strange lump hidden in the collar made Frederick even more curious. Whatever Max was out here for, this thing might be the key. He reached into his pocket for his small utility knife, something he always kept for moments like this. If there was something hidden here, he was going to find it. Frederick worked carefully, using the blade to open the collar's thick seam. Inside, buried in the lining, was a small, smooth device. It caught a bit of light through the trees and shimmered slightly. Turning it over in his hand, Frederick could tell right away. This wasn't just a basic ID chip or tracker. Whatever it was something more. At first, Frederick figured the device had to be some kind of tracker. That would make sense. Max was out here all alone, after all. Knowing the owner could find him any time was a bit of a relief. It would explain why Max seemed so confident and focused, like he had a goal. But the longer Frederick looked at it, the less sure he became. He couldn't just walk away without a better look. Something about the device seemed off. He turned it over slowly, spotting details that didn't fit the usual tracker setup. There weren't any lights blinking or signs that it was sending out a location. What stood out instead was a small speaker and a micro USB port. That didn't point to tracking. It looked more like something used to record. Then it hit him. This wasn't a tracker at all. It was a recorder. That brought up a whole new set of questions. Why would someone want to record what a dog hears or sees? The woods around them were quiet except for birds and the occasional rustle of leaves. Recording all of that seemed like a strange thing to do for just an average pet. Looking closer, Frederick spotted something else he'd missed before. A send button. That meant this little device could do more than just record. It could also transmit. That thought made his stomach twist a little. Was someone out there listening right now? Watching? The idea that someone might be tracking their every move didn't sit right, but it only made Frederick more curious. With the recorder in his hand, Frederick started to feel like he'd been pulled into something bigger. This wasn't just about a lost dog anymore. The device hidden in Max's collar hinted at something planned, maybe even secret. But instead of walking away, Frederick felt more determined than ever to find out what was really going on. Even with the unease creeping in, Frederick stuck by Max. The dog didn't seem worried. He kept moving forward, tail up, eyes bright, as if nothing unusual was happening. And somehow, that helped. Frederick still had no idea where they were headed, but it felt important. Max knew. That much was clear. Getting through the thick forest wasn't easy. The ground was uneven, and the vines slowed them down. But Max handled it like he knew the place inside and out. He picked out the clearest trails, ones Frederick wouldn't have noticed without him. It was like Max had done this before, maybe more than once. Step by step, Max led the way like a guide who'd walked these paths 100 times. The trails he chose were always the smoothest, with the fewest obstacles. Watching him, Frederick was impressed. There was no hesitation in the way Max moved. It was clear this wasn't just a lucky guess. The dog knew exactly where he was going, and he'd probably done it many times before. As they moved deeper into the forest, Frederick stayed sharp. That strange recorder in Max's collar had changed everything. It added a weird tension to the whole trip. Every sound, every shadow felt like it could mean something. He couldn't shake the feeling that they might be heading toward trouble. Max, though, didn't seem bothered at all. He kept walking with calm, steady confidence, like he knew exactly where they were going. And that only made Frederick wonder more. Suddenly, the stillness was broken by the loud buzz of his phone. The sound startled him. It echoed through the quiet woods. He pulled it from his pocket and blinked at the screen. It was his mom. "How do I even have signal out here?" he muttered, answering the call. Hearing her voice, clear and concerned, felt almost unreal after all the strange silence. "What are you up to?" she asked, hearing the tension in his voice. Frederick hesitated, then gave her a quick rundown of everything: the dog, the walk through the woods, and the weird device hidden in the collar. There was a long pause. His mom, who usually had something to say right away, didn't respond. That silence made Frederick's stomach tighten a bit. When she finally spoke, her voice had a nervous edge. "I've heard of that dog," she said slowly. "People around here talk about him, like an old story." Frederick froze mid-step, gripping his phone a little tighter. He didn't expect Max to be part of some local rumor. The idea felt more eerie than exciting. She continued, her tone low and uneasy. "The story goes, he leads people into the forest, and once they follow, they never come back." Frederick stood still, the air around him suddenly heavier. The forest noises, birds, wind, leaves, felt distant now, like they were behind glass. Her words hung there, sharp and strange. He couldn't help but let out a short laugh. "That's just a coincidence," he said, trying to brush it off. Max was right there, sitting nearby and breathing calmly. He wasn't a ghost or a trick. He was just a dog. A smart one, maybe, but not the stuff of myths. Still, as Frederick started walking again, that little laugh didn't do much to calm the knot growing in his chest. As the call ended, Frederick told her, "I'll be careful." He meant it, but even as he spoke, her story echoed in his mind. He didn't believe in legends, not really. Still, something about the way she'd said it stuck with him, and now every step deeper into the woods felt a little heavier. Max kept moving, his pace unchanged, unaware that something had shifted for Frederick. Following behind, Frederick's worry grew. Max wasn't staying on any kind of trail anymore. He was weaving through the trees in a pattern that made no sense. Frederick glanced around and realized how lost he really was. The trees all looked the same, and there wasn't a single clear marker he could use to find his way back. The dog's strange path was starting to feel less like a plan and more like a trap. It hit him hard. They'd left the easy paths behind a while ago. A flicker of panic stirred in his chest. He wasn't sure he could find his way out on his own anymore. What started as a curious detour was now something else entirely. The forest, which once seemed like an exciting place to explore, now felt like a maze designed to get people lost. And for the first time, Frederick questioned if following Max had been the right choice at all. Frederick finally decided he'd gone far enough. He stopped walking and turned around, facing the way they'd come. The excitement of following Max had faded, replaced by a strong need to get back to something familiar. As he took a few steps away from the dog, he felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Part of him had wanted to see this through, but the bigger part just wanted to feel safe again. But Max didn't take the news well. His bark, which had been friendly up to now, suddenly turned loud and sharp. Frederick froze. That sound was different, angry even. He turned to look at Max, confused and a little unsettled. Was leaving really the right move? The sudden change in Max's behavior made him wonder if there was more to this than he thought. Just as Frederick tried to continue walking, Max rushed in front of him, blocking his path. The shift in the dog was jarring. He wasn't the calm, guiding presence from before. Now he stood firm, eyes fixed on Frederick, and something in his stare felt intense, too intense. It felt like Max was warning him or trying to stop him, and not in a friendly way. Max bared his teeth and let out a low growl as he stepped closer. The sound cut through the quiet like a warning bell, and it sent a chill up Frederick's spine. This wasn't the same dog anymore. Max's body was tense, his eyes locked in, and he seemed ready to act. Frederick couldn't tell if the dog was scared or threatening, but either way, it wasn't good. Frederick didn't wait to find out. With panic rising, he spun around and ran, anywhere, just away from Max. He didn't have a plan, just a need to get away. He heard Max behind him at first, but after a few frantic strides, it seemed like he was gaining distance. The trees blurred as he ran full speed through the undergrowth, adrenaline pushing him forward. The barking grew quieter, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. The run felt like forever, though it was probably only 10 minutes. Finally, he slowed, heart pounding in his ears. The forest was silent again. No barking, no footsteps, just quiet. He stood still, trying to breathe and listen. For now, at least, it seemed like he'd gotten away. But his relief didn't last long. As he looked around, that calm started to fade. Nothing looked familiar. No signs, no trail, just more trees in every direction. That sinking feeling in his stomach came rushing back. Could his mom have been right? Was that old story more than just a tale? The thought haunted him as he realized how far from safety he really was. Reaching for his phone, Frederick hoped maybe, just maybe, there'd be a signal. But the screen was empty. No bars, nothing. Whatever little connection he'd had before was completely gone. Now, standing alone with no direction and no way to reach anyone, the phone in his hand felt useless. Just a cold piece of plastic in a place that suddenly felt too big, too quiet, and far too empty. As the sun sank lower, long shadows began to stretch across the forest floor. The fading light brought a new wave of panic to Frederick. The thought of being stuck out here after dark, exposed, unsure, and alone, tightened in his chest. He needed to find shelter, but he couldn't move right away. He stood still, not knowing which direction to trust. The forest offered no hints, just the cold promise of a night lost in the dark. He forced himself to keep walking, though every step felt heavier in the dim light. His eyes scanned the fading surroundings, hoping to spot somewhere, anywhere, safe. The thought of spending the night out here, with no cover and no idea what might be lurking nearby, made his skin crawl. Every little sound, the crack of a twig, the whisper of leaves, felt louder now and much more threatening. Then, just when he was about to give in to the creeping hopelessness, something appeared through the trees. A soft, distant glow. His heart jumped. Light. That had to mean people. Shelter? Maybe help? The darkness around him no longer felt so suffocating. He fixed his eyes on the faint glow and moved quickly toward it, guided by the small beam of hope. The light led him to a small hut tucked into the woods. Its windows glowed with a warm, golden light, casting soft patches onto the forest floor. Seeing that little building made his whole body relax for a second. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the simple wooden walls looked like they'd been there for years. For the first time since this whole thing began, Frederick felt like he might be okay. He approached the window slowly, ready to knock. But something stopped him, his own instincts. After everything that had just happened with Max, he wasn't going to assume anything anymore. He hesitated, staring at the door. Who was inside? Could he trust them? The last thing he wanted was to walk into more danger just when he thought he'd found safety. Instead of knocking, he crouched low beneath the window and pulled out his phone. Using its faint glow, he quietly hit record and lifted the camera to the window. He just wanted a quick look, enough to get an idea of who or what was inside, without giving himself away. The forest around him was silent, and his careful movements didn't make a sound. He played the clip back right away, heart pounding. Inside the hut, he could make out the space clearly, details, belongings, maybe even something that explained what Max had been trying to do. The more he saw, the more questions popped into his mind. Could this be where Max had been leading him all along? Was this the place that tied everything together? Frederick didn't know what to think, but he knew one thing. He had to get out of there. Whatever this place was, he wasn't ready to face it alone. But just as he turned to sneak away, his phone buzzed again, this time showing something unexpected, a nearby Wi-Fi signal. It was coming from inside the hut. For a second, he froze. It was a lifeline, right there, maybe his only one. He didn't waste time. Frederick connected to the signal and immediately opened a call through the internet. He dialed 911, hoping the connection would hold long enough. His hands shook as he got ready to speak. He had a story to tell, a strange video to share, and no idea how long he had. But one thing was certain, someone needed to know what was happening out here. Frederick's hands moved fast, typing out everything he could to the emergency operator. He attached the video, shared his GPS location, and explained as clearly as possible what had happened. That tiny chat window on his screen felt like his last lifeline in the dark. He could only hope someone was on the other end, taking it seriously. The soft glow from his phone was his only light when a sudden noise shattered the stillness. Voices inside the hut rose sharply, then silence. The Wi-Fi dropped instantly. The connection was gone. A cold wave of dread hit him. Someone inside had noticed. They knew. His cover was blown. Then came the shout. "Get him!" A door slammed open. Feet pounded the ground. Panic grabbed hold as Frederick bolted into the dark woods, running as fast as he could. The only thought in his head, get away. But what stopped his heart wasn't the human voices. It was a familiar bark slicing through the night air. It was Max. Frederick turned his head just enough to see the dog gaining on him, a dark blur weaving through the trees. Max wasn't following like before. He was chasing. Fast, focused, and frightening. Frederick heard the growls, the thud of paws on the ground, closer and closer. The same dog who'd walked beside him was now part of the hunt. With branches slapping his face and lungs burning, Frederick realized he couldn't keep this up. He skidded to a stop and spun around, ready for whatever came next. Max charged toward him. There was no time left. Frederick braced himself, expecting the worst: teeth, claws, pain. But it didn't come. At the last second, Max stopped. He stood just inches away, breathing hard, nose twitching. His growl faded. He sniffed at Frederick like he was trying to figure something out. Recognition flickered in the dog's eyes. He wasn't just some hunter on command. He remembered. The tension broke. Max's body relaxed. His tail didn't wag, but the threat in his posture vanished. He kept sniffing, circling slightly, checking again. Whatever orders he'd been given, they were clashing with the connection he'd formed earlier. Frederick took a chance. He ripped a strip from the bottom of his shirt, winced, and pressed it to a fresh scrape on his knee. Blood soaked into the fabric. He crouched down, holding it out to Max. "Take this," he whispered. "Go back. Let them think I didn't make it." Max hesitated, then gently took the cloth in his mouth. Without a sound, he turned and disappeared back into the trees, heading toward the cabin. Frederick stood frozen, listening as the soft footsteps and rustling leaves faded into nothing. And then it was quiet again. He was alone, still lost, still deep in the woods. But he had time now. Precious, quiet time. With nothing else to do but wait and hope, he looked up at the sky through the trees. If his message had gone through, someone out there knew where he was. And maybe, just maybe, help was on the way. After what felt like forever, the distant sound of helicopter blades broke through the silence of the forest. Frederick's chest tightened with hope as beams of light swept across the trees, heading straight for the cabin. It wasn't long before officers moved in, quiet, fast, and well-prepared. They caught the man inside while he was still asleep. Frederick heard someone call his name. Just like that, the nightmare was finally over. By early morning, the police station was already buzzing. Officers led Frederick, Max, and the man from the cabin inside. There was tension in the air as everyone tried to piece together what had really happened out there. Frederick felt drained but relieved, still processing everything. Max stayed close to him, calm and alert, almost as if he knew this was the end of something big. In a quiet room, Frederick told them everything, from the moment he saw Max on the roadside to the discovery of the hut. He didn't leave out a thing. When the man was questioned, he didn't have much to say. But he didn't have to. The things found in his home said enough. It all pointed to one thing: he had been using the forest for illegal hunting, and Frederick had stumbled right into the middle of it. The investigation confirmed it. The man had been poaching rare wildlife, collecting and selling them for profit. His home was full of disturbing trophies, clear proof of what he'd been doing. Even Max had been part of it, trained to lure animals in. It was a dark and twisted setup, but thanks to Frederick, it had finally come to light. What shocked everyone was how skilled Max really was. The same training used for hunting animals had been extended to humans, something Frederick had experienced firsthand. But it wasn't Max's fault. He had been trained and used. Now people could see him for what he truly was, a smart, capable dog who deserved better. With the poacher likely headed to prison, attention turned to Max. After everything, no one wanted to see him go back into a life like that. The officers talked about finding him a new home, maybe even giving him a second chance at a life of purpose, one where his talents could actually help people. It was a hopeful note in an otherwise dark story. As the case wrapped up, there was quiet optimism in the air. Frederick had shown courage when it mattered most. Max had found his way out of a terrible situation, and together, in the middle of nowhere, they'd helped stop something much bigger than themselves. If this story moved you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stories like Frederick and Max's remind us how far a little courage and the bond between a person and an animal can go. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more true stories that matter.
If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.